Okay, in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to look at particular justice, and then I'm going to talk you through rectificatory justice. So we're going to have a kind of very brief overview of particular justice, and then an explanation of what rectificatory justice is, and then in the next video, we'll talk about distributive justice. All right, so particular justice is concerned with fairness and equality. That's the way that Aristotle isolates it. Similar to what we saw with general justice, Aristotle says, well, look, one of the ways that we use this word just and unjust is to refer to people who are being fair or unfair. He calls people who are unfair grasping, people who take too much, who want to have more, right? Something like that, more than their fair share. That seems to be a slightly different than virtue entire. Particular justice and fairness or equality seems to be more limited, is Aristotle's idea. It's concerned only with the goods of prosperity. That's Aristotle's phrase, the goods of prosperity. And he doesn't give an exhaustive list of what those things are, but he does mention three: money, honor, and safety. So particular justice, it's going to refer to our characters and how our characters relate to others, but it's not going to refer to every way in which our characters might refer to others or might relate to others. It's only going to refer to the way our characters relate to others with regards to these goods of prosperity. And so, for example, Aristotle, you might take as an example adultery, right? Cheating on a spouse or something like that. That is going to be a vice of self-indulgence. It's going to be intemperate or immoderate behavior, according to Aristotle. And in as much as it's a kind of vice, it's going to be a kind of unlawfulness or a kind of injustice in the general sense. Adultery, cheating on your spouse, on your partner. Right? It's going to be unjust in the general sense. It is not unjust in this particular sense, because adultery doesn't have anything to do with these goods of prosperity. And so Aristotle would say something like adultery, it's unjust in the general sense, but in the particular sense, it's neither just nor unjust. Particular justice is irrelevant to adultery, right? It's neither particularly just nor particularly unjust. It's in the same, something like that is Aristotle's idea. So particular justice is kind of more limited, these goods of prosperity. Well, it's still concerned with our character, and so our virtues, how we're disposed to treat other people, but it's only going to be concerned with those parts or aspects of our character that are concerned with the goods of prosperity. And Aristotle, if you go back and read book 2, chapter 7, it's pretty clear what those are going to be. At the very least, they're going to be generosity, magnificence, magnanimity, and a virtue that doesn't receive a name, doesn't have a name. It's an unnamed virtue, but it's concerned with small honors. Well, why those virtues? Well, generosity and magnificence are both concerned with money. Generosity is a virtue that's concerned with small amounts of money. Magnificence is a virtue that's concerned with large amounts of money. Don't worry about the details. They're both concerned with how we spend our money. Magnanimity is a virtue that's concerned with large honors, is the way Aristotle puts it, whereas this unnamed virtue is concerned with small honors. So all four of those virtues regulate or govern how we behave with regard to either money or honor. Well, those are the goods of prosperity. And so particular justice is going to be concerned with those virtues, with the expressions of those virtues. And as a kind of an initial attempt to understand what particular justice or how it works, generally speaking, think of it in a similar way as we thought about general justice. So what's particular justice? Well, it's kind of, you can think of it as exhibiting generosity, but focusing on how that generosity affects other people. More generally, it's, focus on how somebody uses money. But what you're interested in is not what's motivating them or their inner psychology. You're interested in how their use of money, how their behavior with regards to money affects other people. Now you're in the realm of particular justice. One thing that can be kind of confusing, but maybe this will clarify, and so hope set things straight. And Aristotle makes this point actually, any instance of particular justice is also going to be an instance of general justice, but not every instance of general justice is an instance of particular justice. Because when you exhibit generosity and we focus on how it's affecting other people, well, that's a kind of particular justice. But it's also a kind of general justice, because general justice is concerned with all the virtues. But to use the example I was talking about earlier, when you commit adultery, say, hopefully you never do that, but if that happens, that's a kind of general injustice, but it's not a particular injustice, because particular justice is only concerned with these goods of prosperity. All right. That's Aristotle's idea. And so what he's picking up on with particular justice is the fact that we tend to hone in on the language of justice when it comes to things like money and honor. And we'll talk more about honor later, but think of it in terms of money. I mean, that really gets us using the language or terminology of justice when something goes awry with money. Yeah. And so he's trying to capture that idea by talking about this particular kind of justice, particular justice. Now let's look at rectificatory justice, because there are two kinds of particular justice, as you remember from the tree, rectificatory and distributive. Let's see how rectificatory justice works. So Aristotle's discussion of it is fairly abstract. The idea that he's getting at, however, is simple. It is not a hard idea. He describes it in about the hardest way you could describe it. He describes it very abstractly, but the idea, I trust everyone's going to understand. It's not very hard to understand. So what he says, though, and this is the hard part, this is why I have no idea what you're talking about here. So he says, rectificatory justice. Oh, here, you want to know what that is? It follows an arithmetic proportion. Well, what is that? I don't know. I mean, that sounds to me, I'm sure at some point we all learned what that was, but it's not the kind of thing that everyone just has. He doesn't tell us what exactly it is, but his example actually uses it. An arithmetic proportion is that A minus B equals C minus D. 2 minus 1 equals 3 minus 2. Yeah, okay, I got that right. That's an arithmetic proportion. Simple. Well, how does that have anything to do with rectificatory justice? Well, we'll see in just a second. What's going to be crucially important for our purposes is that if A and C are equal, B and D are going to have to be equal too. And for Aristotle, we're going to see what A, B, C, and D refer to. Again, it's not very hard. But he makes a point of saying that when it comes to rectificatory justice, A and C are going to be equal. And so that means that B and D have to be equal. That's kind of Aristotle's discussion. I don't know what that means. How does any of that, what do the A, B, C, and D have anything to do with justice? Here's an example. And again, it's simple. So let's say me, Jeff, have a lawnmower, which I do, and it does look something kind of like that. All right, pretty nice lawnmower. That looks pretty good. And let's say you are super impressed with it. You really would like that lawnmower. That lawnmower looks real nice to you, and it's a nice lawnmower, so it's understandable. You might say, hey, Jeff, you might shoot me an email saying, hey, Jeff, I just gotta, I gotta have your lawnmower. Tell you what, you show up, I'll bring some money. Yeah. And you show up, I don't know, where would we show? Outside I don't know, the library. Right? You roll your lawnmower up and I'll show up with my money and we'll meet. And there's a picture of us meeting out in front of the library, right? To make the deal, make the exchange. Yeah. There's going to be our example. Me, I am A in the arithmetic proportion. My lawnmower would be B. You would be C, and your money would be D. Okay, something like that. And and Aristotle's explicit about this, when it comes to rectificatory justice, differences between people don't matter. Differences between the people that are kind of involved in the exchange or in the case of justice or whatever it might be, differences between the people kind of drop out. They don't really matter. That's not going to be true when we turn to distributive justice, but for rectificatory justice, it is. So A equals C. There's no relevant difference between us. Now, at this point, Aristotle would say, there I am with my lawnmower, there you are with your money. Things are equal or fair. I have my lawnmower, you have your money. There's nothing unequal. There's nothing unjust yet. Or whatever. There's nothing unjust. Things are fair and equal. Yeah. Aristotle, A, B, C, D, arithmetic proportion. He uses lines to illustrate what he's talking about here. So let's use a line, right? So there we got lines. We have A, B, C, and D, those line segments. A, right, and C. If you look at those line segments, they're the same length. Yeah. So A and C are equal. Now, we're going to make the exchange, right? Here it goes. Now, I'm really, I like my lawnmower quite a bit and I kind of need it, but I guess apparently not as much as I need your money or whatever, but, I don't want to let it go and I don't know if I can trust you. And so I make you hand over the money first, right? And so you give me your money. Well, now things are not equal. Look at my line down there, DAB. That's longer than your line, C. Things are unequal. And if I were to just kind of get out of there, right, just take off, well, I would have done something unjust then. There would be injustice that needed rectification. Why? Because look, there's inequality. My line down there is longer than yours. There's a kind of inequality, a kind of unfairness. But now I would never do that, right? I'm not that bad a guy or whatever. I wouldn't just take off with your money and my lawnmower. Moreover, you could probably catch up to me if I had to push the lawnmower away, right? So anyway, so I don't do that. I hand you the lawnmower. I scoot it on over to you. Well, that restores equality, right? Now there are those two line segments, DA and BC. DA equals BC. And the reason this works is because B and D are equal. B and D are equal in value. They have their line segments down there are the same length, right? And so you give me an amount of money that is equal to the value of my lawnmower. And so when we exchange, equality is maintained, justice is maintained, right? That's the idea. Rectificatory justice applies in the first instance to these kinds of exchanges. Equal goods need to be exchanged for equal goods. Something like that, right? So you give me money for the lawnmower. Aristotle thinks that this same framework applies to punishment. I'm not going to illustrate it out there, but It's a little bit more abstract, if you will. But if I were to, well, I don't know. I don't need to. Let's say you really, really, really hate this class, and so you see me out in front of the library, and you just deck me in the face, yeah, or whatever. I don't know what you do. That produces a kind of inequality, according to Aristotle. You have, I don't know, taken away my peace of mind and my, my not feeling pain. You've given me a bunch of pain and suffering. That makes things unequal between us. And then you're overjoyed because you just decked that guy in the face, and man, he had it coming, right? And so you're overjoyed and I'm in pain. Well, there's a kind of inequality there, and it needs to be rectified, right? Our line, so to speak, would be unequal. We go to a judge to rectify that. The judge punishes you, right? And so detracts from your line, subtracts from your line, and maybe, he makes you pay me a fine or something, and so, or pay my medical bills or something like that. And so my line is added to. The judge restores equality. It's a kind of rectificatory justice. That's Aristotle's idea.